What is up, guys? Delboy here. So Jaime Munguia defeats Liam Smith by a unanimous decision to retain his WBO light middleweight title. Now the consensus online is that this was a terrible performance from Jaime Munguia. He's been exposed and it's just a matter of time before he gets found out. Now I agree with the fact that it wasn't a great performance and it did highlight a lot of the defensive flaws in Munguia's game, and it highlighted some areas where he needs to improve, So I totally get why people are a little bit down on Jaime Munguia. I think a lot of people are expecting him to stop Liam Smith. I think a lot of people were expecting a repeat of his devastating performance against Saddam Ali. But it wasn't to be. Obviously Liam Smith is a lot more durable than Ali, but he's quite limited. And I didn't think people expected him to really pose much of a threat to Munguia or really give him any issues, but that wasn't the case. And you've got to credit Liam Smith's toughness and his durability for getting through this and making it competitive. I felt in the first 5 rounds Liam Smith was actually having a lot of success. He was picking his shots relatively well, displaying some good skills on the inside in terms of offense. And he was winning rounds early, but I felt after Smith got dropped, at that stage, he kind of went into his shell. He was a little bit more negative and he was a lot more unwilling to trade. And, second half of the fight, I felt Munguia kind of took control and he won a clear, unanimous decision. Now, listen, we've got to put this performance in perspective. It wasn't the best, it wasn't what we was expecting, and like I said earlier, it highlighted a lot of the existing flaws in Munguia's game. However, we have to take into account that this guy is only 21 years old. He's a baby, Very few fighters in the history of boxing have peaked at 21 years old, He's got a lot of years left in him. I feel as he has more fights at this level, you'll see him improve each and every time. Like I said, he's inexperienced. He needs to see a variety of different styles, and this is one of the problems of winning a title so early. He's 21 years old, he's won a title, but when you've got a title, it's very hard to squeeze development fights in, because when you've got a title and you're still taking development fights, to me it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. When Canelo Alvarez won his first title at 154 pounds, he won a vacant WBC title. And his first few defences were terrible. He was fighting guys like a shot Kermit Cintron. He was fighting, I think it was Ryan Rhodes and people like that. His level of competition was terrible. And it was clear he was still developing with a title. I wouldn't be surprised to see something similar with Jaime Munguia. Now, if that is the case, I hope it's not to the extent that Canelo Alvarez did it. But, I could see something similar happening here. Before fights with the likes of Jarrett Hurd and Jamel Charlo, I do feel Munguia needs a couple of more fights to develop, get used to being a champion, see a couple of different styles that are gonna give him a couple of different looks and a couple of different problems. I still feel he needs to season a little bit as a fighter, and having a title at such a young age makes it hard to do that. Now, looking at the WBO rankings, I feel that guys like Tony Harrison or Julian Williams would actually be quite good opponents for Jaime Munguia. Both Williams and Harrison can fight on the back foot. They've got solid skills. They fought at a relatively high level. Guys who will bring something different to the table for Munguia to cope with and to deal with. But both of those guys are susceptible to pressure fighters. We saw that with Julian Williams. I don't think Julian Williams handles pressure well at all. We saw that against Ishe Smith. We also saw that against Nathaniel Gallimore. I think if you put it on Julian Williams, he could crack. So I feel that Julian Williams could be a really good opponent for Jaime Munguia's next fight. And I feel that, Tony Harrison would be another good opponent early on. I feel that the movement of Harrison could give Munguia some issues. It will be interesting to see how Munguia dealt with that. But again, like Julian Williams, I feel that Tony Harrison, he doesn't deal with pressure that well, and he always looks vulnerable when a guy's coming onto him relentlessly. We saw that against Willie Nelson, and we also saw that against Jarrett Hurd. I feel that Munguia could replicate similar game plans to those guys and take Tony Harrison out. I feel overall Harrison or Julian Williams would be ideal fights. Now, I personally don't think we're going to get either one of those fights. I feel we're going to get a weak title defence. We're going to see, I believe, Jaime Munguia versus Patrick Teixeira from Brazil. Now, if you recall, a few years ago, Teixeira got knocked out against Curtis Stevens in a couple of rounds. He's rebounded with a couple of wins. He's ranked in the WBO. And I also believe he's with Golden Boy, or at least he was with Golden Boy. So you'd imagine that Munguia versus Teixeira would be quite makeable, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the fight we get next. But it wasn't a great performance from Munguia, and he's got a lot of things to improve on. You know, defensively, there's a lot of room for improvement. Obviously, he's an aggressive fighter, you know, but I would like to see Munguia have a stronger guard coming forward. You know, at least have some form of defence coming forward. Not only that, keep your chin tucked a little bit lower, because Munguia coming forward does get caught flush. Now, Golovkin's a good example. Golovkin's defence is underrated. It's not as bad as people say. But even when you see Golovkin get hit, you never see him get hit on the chin. It's always at the top of the head. He keeps his chin tucked very, very well. So even when he does get hit, you know, a lot of the time it's at the top of the head where it's less likely to do damage. You know, when you get caught on the chin, obviously, you're more likely to get knocked out or badly hurt. But when you get caught on the top of the head, you know, it does less damage. And that's something Golovkin does very well. You know, he always keeps his chin tucked. And I think Golovkin is the type of fighter Munguia should be looking at. You know, how to develop his jab coming forward, how to use that jab as a rangefinder, but not only that, how to use that jab while cutting the ring off, how to, you know, you can kind of move your opponent with your jab on the front foot if you know what you're doing. There are many different ways Munguia could improve, you know. Maybe he rests his head on the centre line a lot, therefore he's open for uppercuts. You know, I'd like to see Munguia move his head a little bit. He's never going to be a Mike Tyson, but, you know, slipping the odd jab here and there, you know, give your opponent a few different angles and looks would be beneficial. You know, use some feints. Don't just come marauding forward looking for overhand punches and body shots. You know, I feel Munguia, you know, he's got raw potential. He seems to have a pretty good gas tank, decent power. You know, he's enthusiastic. There's a lot to work with there, but he really does need a lot of work. What do you guys think? Peace.